Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Life Health Show. We are back. This is part 3 to my interview with Brian Clement from HIppocrates Health Institute. The first part, we looked at what Brian had to say about getting essential fatty acids on a vegan diet. The second part, even more controversial, was about fruit and sugar and how much fruit we should be eating or not eating. And we had a lot of comments about that. But now we're going to have the third part here. People have been asking me, well, what does Brian eat and how much can we get away with? And if we're not eating fruit and we're eating just raw foods, can we get enough food? And how much should we really be eating? So this is going to be a very exciting part of the interview for you to watch. So important. Now, I got to be honest with you. I've interviewed Brian many times and I've known him for many years. I came out of this interview with the biggest smile on my face. And people are asking me in the comments of the other 2 interviews, do I agree with him or not agree with him? And no 2 people agree 100% on everything, but everything he said makes sense, and he has the experience to back it up. Okay? So my experience, I'm open-minded to try what's going to work and what's going to give me longevity. Now, the few things I didn't agree with him about versus the massive amount of things I agree with him about, I'm going to still have an open mind, but you're not going to find information like this out in the wild there because a lot of people aren't willing or able to do what Brian's doing and talking about. But I know, forget about names, popularity, forget about everything. I know what Brian is talking about in this interview is the real deal and it works. So we're going to hear about this, what Brian eats, how often, and can we eat a raw food diet without fruit? So let's hear what he has to say, and I'll interject my commentary as we go along. In terms of the Hippocrates diet or vegan diet in general, where you get your calories from, some people say starches and some people say sugar, fat, fruit.
Right.
That's where you're going to get. But if somebody's on a Hippocrates diet with no starch, because you're eating all Hippocrates diet, and you cut out the fruit, where is the bulk of your calories coming from?
Remember.
So the reason why I ask this question, everybody, is because if you're not doing a 100% raw vegan diet, you can eat starches and you get starchy vegetables, cooked vegetables, and get your calories in there, or at least your food in there. Because not everyone's counting calories. But if you're not eating that, fruit is, you think, the only place you can get it from, right? But Hippocrates Health Institute says different. Let's hear.
A big part of the more solid part of the diet are nut loaves, seed sauces, burgers made out of nuts and seeds, beans that are sprouted and made into preparations. And so there's a higher caloric content. But the whole concept of calories has been gone for 40 years. There's not a serious nutritional scientist today that looks at calories. That's passé. And so we look at high nutritious foods and lower calories as being the longevity diet. So what we clearly understand...
High nutritious foods and lower calories. Did you get that? High nutritious foods and lower calories. So keep that in mind as he's continuing here.
Modern science is people who eat high nutritious foods in small amounts live the longest and have the least disease. So we're not aspiring to have high calories, it's clean calories or clean energy. In my book, Life Force, 20 years ago, I speak about let's get rid of calories and talk about energy. And energy pretty much is in the food when it's raw. Once you cook it out, the energy's been sucked out of it by the heating process.
But you want to get enough. Can you get enough by eating 100% Hippocrates diet?
I eat 1 meal a day.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment, yes. But 1 meal a day. We're going to talk about that because there's something out there called OMAD, 1 meal a day. We're going to talk about that, but let's continue. Without the starch or the sugar,
yes,
the nuts you're suggesting, I mean, can you... I mean, I know you can do too much of anything, but where would you cut a limit? 1 cup of soaked nuts a day? Where do you cut that limit?
When you sprout these things, they become totally different than what most of these, quote, experts are talking about. They're talking about taking and I do this sometimes. I'm on a plane, I get off the plane, I'm hungry, and I'll take, raw nuts and I'll eat them. That's not the worst thing in the world compared to what I used to eat.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is, that's wildly different than if I soak them and sprout them for 2 days. Now, it unlocks the goodness. It makes all other things happen, not to be redundant, proteins to amino acids, carbohydrates to simple sugars, fats to essential fats. And the digestion becomes markedly better. And so that's the difference. And sure, you can get enough.
Did you hear what he just said here? So important. When you're eating nuts and seeds, soaking them and sprouting them or soaking them for 2 days and rinsing them off is releasing the enzyme inhibitors and making the nut more digestible. Now, for me, I am not the biggest fan of dehydrated food, but when you're eating nuts, you're eating dehydrated food. That's what a common nut and seed. I'm not talking about roasted nuts. I'm talking about raw nuts and seeds, whether it's almonds, walnuts, pecans, pistachios. It's all dehydrated. The water's not in there anymore. There's no liquid in it. But when you soak it, it swells up, it gets bigger. And all animals in nature do this. When they take a squirrel, for example, they might bury their nuts in the ground. Yeah, they're storing them up for the future, but also they get wet and they sprout. It changes the game. I could literally overeat on nuts that are not sprouted. But if I eat sprouted nuts, I just had today, I had some pistachios. I could literally eat a pound of pistachios and overeat on them if they're not sprouted. Sprouted, I can't even eat a quarter cup without getting completely full. And it's so much more efficient this way. The HIppocrates Health Institute isn't something that was put together, in somebody's basement in 2 months. They've been spending years and years and years perfecting this program. And I highly recommend it. Whether you're looking to overcome disease or whether you're looking to have longevity, not only is it the best program out there, but Brian's taken it to another level. Doing what the average person won't even do in eating less and understanding this process. Let's hear some more. Somebody that's going to sprout a cup of nuts, it becomes 2 cups of nuts now.
Oh, yes.
So if somebody's going to use a recipe with a cup of nuts, would they use half that amount?
Exactly.
So they use 1 cup of sprouted nuts.
Exactly right.
So what, from a sprouted nut standpoint and seeds, what is the too much? If somebody was looking to take
again, I could, because when I got off the heavy junk food vegan diet, I was massively eating nuts and seeds because it was filling me up, because I was still eating, as many of you do, out of emotions. So it was squashing my emotions. I didn't want to feel. So I'd eat like, a 2-pound nut loaf a day and put seed sauce all over everything because I didn't like the taste of salad at that time. And so that's too much. And
this is being transparent here. It's so good to hear him talk about this, because from my observation, just about everyone eating or attempting to eat a raw vegan diet is overeating, including myself. And for whatever reasons we're overeating, a lot of it has to do with emotional reasons and so on. A lot of it has to do with ignorance. But we don't need to eat the amounts we're eating. And if we're eating more than we need, for whatever reason we are doing that, for whatever reason, the real problem comes in eating too much. And this interview helped me wake up. This stuff he's talked about already helped me realize a lot of these things. And there's a connection between overeating and, as he was talking about, what we're overeating on, nuts and fruit. You don't see raw vegans overeating on salad. They're overeating on nuts or fruit, or nuts and fruit. And I believe he solved the nut problem with sprouting them. Sprouting them makes it much more harder to overeat on them.
But the other thing I want to say to you, I don't want to be a food Nazi. I want you to realize overeating healthy food is so much better than overeating junk food, even vegan junk food. Knock yourself out with that. Eventually, do the work, do the psychological and spiritual work. And I think let's reverse that. Spiritual and then psychological work necessary to really have gratitude for what we're consuming. To thank God. Thank you so much for giving me this food. Why it sadly went out of style, we pray. My house, we prayed before we ate, and we thank God for what we're getting. Do we do that today? We're shoveling it down. We can't wait. We're in the car driving, going through fast food restaurants. We've got to have mindfulness around food. We talk about mindfulness, praying, and all the, if we don't have the same kind of intent around food, it becomes damaging. Even if you're an overeater like I was, an overeating healthy food like I was, it's not going to be as harmful. Use mindfulness, have gratitude. You will not overconsume. I wish I knew the advice I'm giving you now. It took me years. I see other people, it takes weeks.
Again, 15% of the diet if it's fruit. What percentage of the diet would you recommend be nuts and seeds, sprouted of course?
I would say no more than 10, 15%. Because remember, it's heavy stuff. And then the rest of it should be plant-based foods.
Okay. Now,
grains, remember sprouted grains, sprouted beans, also green foods, and the plethora of different vegetables there are. I'm never, here I am, a world-renowned expert in this stuff, and I always find something I've never heard of before.
Sure.
Never stops. But what most people don't do, I see it here. The data is clear that in the developed world, less than 5% of the population exercise adequately. And I'm not saying, adequately means you better do this or you're not going to be healthy. The other thing that we have that's messy in our minds is that food makes us big or food makes us small. We don't eat food, we get thin. We eat food, we get large. The truth of the matter is we've got to now start realizing muscle development is what you want, not food to make you heavy. Eating the healthy food, remember, we have 8 million other known species. Listen closely. We've identified 8 million other species on the planet. There's maybe another 4 million we haven't identified. The natural scientists today are telling us we're probably killing 36 a day we'll never identify. Eat a 100% raw diet. The only species that doesn't eat a 100% raw diet are human species. Now, come to Hippocrates. 70 years we've been putting people on a raw, organic, plant-based diet and watching them come back to life. And old farts like me, we just don't age the way the rest of you do. It's that simple. I'm 73, and I actually feel like I'm 23. And that's not a joke. So with that said, it's why I hardly eat, but I'm not small, is because I go into the gym and I lift heavy weights 3 days a week. I'm not suggesting you do that. When I started, it was light weights. I never exercised a day in my life. I used to think jocks and athletes were like goofy, as I was lifting a cigarette to this side of my mouth and a joint to this side of my mouth.
This information, I wish I would have had this information when I started 30 years ago by raw food diet. And I started at Hippocrates, and I had a talk with Brian in his office, and it was good then. I actually have an interview with him in my first book, The Raw Life. But this information is information that Brian learned over the last 30 years as well. And if anyone's on a raw food diet or thinking about a raw food diet, this information is extremely important. And I know some of you from the comments disagree, saying we need to eat a lot and eating little is dangerous advice. That's not my experience at all. My experience personally, and also from what I see in helping people, is the more people eat, the more they're setting themselves up for disaster, and the less people eat, the better off they're going to be, even if it's raw food. Now, it takes some time to get to certain places, and some people could do things other people couldn't. Brian said it took him many years, or somebody else take a couple of weeks or months to suppress emotions and realize a couple of things here. But just such important information. This is the perfect icing to the 3 interviews we did here with him. Great information, and let's hear some more. Now, getting on this other topic, which I've been fascinated with for many years, about the amount we eat.
Yes.
And I know for years you fasted 1 day a week and recommend Hippocrates people do. On a personal level now, you're saying you eat once a day, which the greatest health writers always said, no more than 2 times a day is all we need to eat.
Exactly.
1 time a day, which is OMAD, which is quite popular today.
Yes.
People are eating the wrong things though with that, but it's an excellent thing. Eating once a day, fasting once a day, excellent, because it's intermittent fasting to its highest degree.
Yes.
And it works. So give us an example, and I know you're much advanced where people are because you've been cleansing for many years.
Yeah.
Give us an example of what you eat, how much, and what time throughout the day.
So not to put a stick in the mud, but let's preface this by saying some of you listening may have food problems. You may have anorexia, you may have bulimia, you may be emaciated because you've just gone through chemotherapy or long-term antibiotics for Lyme's disease or something. Do not follow what I'm suggesting now. You're going to need a lot more food to build your body back up. You're going to need a lot more food until you become emotionally secure at this point. Now, the rest of us.
I'm glad he said that. Such great information and knowledge. It's such a great preference for people that have a need for more food. He's able, after all these years at HIppocrates Health Institute, to work with people to identify the type of person that might need to eat more or less, or what amounts we need to eat. You know, nobody's with everyone all the time. We can only take it for their word what they're doing. But I could tell you I spoke to a lot of people, and I've been living this lifestyle for a long time. Now, what he's talking right now about the amount of food he eats and people could eat is excellent.
Yes, since 1971, I fasted 1 day a week. Somewhere when I was in my late 50s, my body started to say, fast more than 1 day. So when I'm here in town and not on planes, because when you're on long plane flights, never eat. It's a great way to maintain more radioactivity. So I may switch it then. But if I'm going here to New York 3 hours, no. I still eat that day when I get off the plane. I went to 2 days. So I stopped eating after my meal on Tuesday night. I started eating on Thursday night. And I'm perfectly fine. What you just said, let me repeat. This is not for everyone. If you were an Olympic level athlete and you were 25 years old and you were training for the Olympics, I'd be telling you to eat several times a day. And a lot more than I eat, you know, a man in my 70s. Number two, I eat 1 meal a day. And I do it at the wrong time. For all of you that want to do that and you're a little older and your metabolism is slowed down and you don't require an Olympic athlete or you're not a construction worker out there banging hammer 8-9 hours a day, you may want to eat in the middle of the day. Now, my excuse, and it's a good one, is that when I start working usually early in the morning until early evening, I can't stop. I have one button. Remember, I'm that extreme, like many of you. So I put it on and I can't take the time to eat. It just doesn't settle with me. So I do eat in the evening. Is that the right time to do it? No. You wrote a book years ago, which was absolutely right. The entire world's population, other than police, prostitutes, and criminals, went to bed when the sun went down 200 years ago and got up when the sun came up. That's how your body evolved. That's how it's programmed, like it or not. With that said, if you eat and go to bed right after that, you're not going to digest the food, you're not going to get the nutrients, and between 11:30 in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon, the sun is at the point where it's telling you to eat the most food. Your hydrochloric acid that breaks down proteins is most active then. So the universe is actually saying that's when to eat. Lunch is 11:30. So I don't do that. So don't follow me on this one. Try to do it in the middle of the day. If you have to eat at night, always do it 3-4 hours before you go to bed. And I always walk after I eat. I shouldn't say always. 9 out of 10 times I walk after I eat. So why would that be better? Because remember, the quality and quantity of nutrients that are in the food that I consume are so exceptional. One point, in fact, we have green drinks here. Maybe 16 ounces.
That was my next question.
Yeah. A green drink, by the way, has the protein the average Western person absorbs in 3 days. One green, I'm drinking 4 of those a day, as an example. Even on fast day, I drank that.
So that was going to, not to interrupt, that was going to be the question. If you're eating 1 meal a day, are you doing the Hippocrates green drinks as often as you want? No problem?
Absolutely. And I shouldn't say I limit it, but after I get to 3 to 4 a day, that's enough.
Now, would it be better for somebody to just do water and eat once a day, or the green drinks are a help, or does that depend on somebody's personality?
Let's explain the water thing. So I was a major advocate of water fasting. So back in the 70s, I lived in Europe for 3 years, and I directed and developed centers. So it was wonderful because I had a whole new view of how the world worked with natural healing. It was a tradition there. It was a classic there. And I was putting really healthy people that came to this health center I was directing in Denmark on water fast. And here, when people were sick already, they were laying on the couch. Now I'm watching healthy people lay on the couch and their eyeballs going in circle. And it didn't take long to realize that maybe this wasn't what I perceived it was. Now, when you're under medical health care and you're sick and a doctor's monitoring you several times a day, different story. Pretty big fan of that for everyone except anorexics, bulimics, and emaciated people. But you're not that person. You're at home trying to do this. I looked in the library, which still stands, I looked at it a year ago, that in the West we have per capita more nutritional starvation than in countries that half the population is starving. They say, well, how's that possible? Because here, even health food eaters are eating junk food. Go back to what I said a few minutes ago, that when I go to the whole food market, my entertainment is to see how few healthy foods are in that basket. They're spending hundreds of dollars for it. It's just not healthy food, and it's not nutritious. And even if you don't understand anything else, when you cook a food, most of the nutrition's gone. And I, years ago, realized that the most important part of the food, yes, this is the highest protein diet, the highest vitamin diet, highest mineral diet, highest essential fat, is not that. It's the hormones, the oxygen, and the phytochemicals and enzymes in the Hippocrates living food green diet that are actually the medicines that keep the youth, keep the vitality, all of that. And I even believe spirituality, that's a whole nother story.
If you don't know about the Hippocrates Health Institute after these interviews, contact me at the email below and I'll tell you all about it. It's where I learned about health and this diet many years ago. Now, a caveat to me, what I've been doing all these years, I've been eating the Hippocrates diet, but with more fruit. And maybe it's my age, maybe it's the stuff I've been hearing, maybe it's what I'm learning. I'm learning to see now I've been overeating on fruit. I've definitely been overeating on fruit. You might hear what I ate or eat and say, oh, that's not too much. I know it's too much. I'm going to continue with my Hippocrates diet, but definitely lower the amount of fruit. Not because anything Brian said, but because I know I'm overeating. And I wish I would have realized that. And sometimes I knew and sometimes I didn't. But let's get back to the interview and hear what he has to say, because this information is very important. And I invite you to put comments below if you agree or disagree, and open up a discussion.
So with that said, I'm getting that nutrition. I'm not suggesting vegans do what I do and eating a Beyond Burger or only fruit. I've just seen too many people harm themselves.
What's your window of eating when you do eat?
Well, so let's say the latest I ever would eat is at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And the first time I eat again is the next day.
No, I mean in terms of how long does it take you to eat that meal? A half hour, 3 hours?
No. In my case, I'm teaching another thing I don't do well enough called chewing. It probably takes 30 minutes.
30 minutes. So can you give us an example of what you ate in your meal yesterday?
So last night is an example. So we went home and I ate early last night. I ate about 5:30 last night. And in my salad, I had 8 different sprouts. I had arugula, which is the highest plant food in calcium in the world. I had avocado in that. I had sprouted pecans in that. I had sprouted pumpkin seeds in that. I had 3 ground seeds on it that were all sprouted organic, of course, sprouted, then dried, and then ground. One is flaxseed, one is poppy seed, one is sesame seed, one is chia seed. What did I miss out on? And pumpkin seed. I already said pumpkin seed. And so that meal alone, I could sustain perfect health on. Now, that I seem to chew more because you can't just swallow salad or you gag. So I do chew more. And then after that, I ate a little bit of cooked food last night, and it was just greens that we steamed, and it was escarole. I grew up in the New York area around a lot of Italians, and I learned to like escarole. And that's what I had last night.
Do you eat cooked food from an emotional standpoint, or do you think it helps you?
No, I don't think it helps me in any way. I think it's still the mommy factor, as I say. You know, I just told this story about the Italians. So it brings back memories. And remember, if you're sitting there listening to me with stage 4 disease, you don't eat cooked food. Now, not because I'm a tough guy that, you know, is a zealot. Cooked food weakens your body. There's 3 things we know about cooked plant-based organic food. First, we learned in 1933. None of you were born. That was called leukocytosis. You cook an organic plant-based food, you basically change it to a carbon structure, the immune system attacks it. Now you actually destroy the immune system, which is preventing the disease. Number 2, 1952, I was a little one. They came out and said any heated oil causes cancer and heart problems. Every single plant has oil in it. You're creating a carcinogen by eating that. The number 3, 39 years ago, the school my youngest child is in medical school at, the top research center and medical school in Europe, Karolinska in Stockholm, basically came out and said if you heat a carbohydrate at a high temperature, it has an acrylamide. So these are not ideas we came up with. Thank God when we came up with these ideas 70 years ago, over time they've been supported by scientific community and unchallengeable, by the way. So everything I said, a lot of you naysayers or so-called arrogant experts out there that doubt what I say, read research before you challenge what I say.
If you're not eating sugar in your diet, there's no issues with food combining. Is that correct?
No, that's not true.
Okay, explain.
That's not true. So a nut and a bean should not go together.
Even a sprouted bean?
Even sprouted.
So if you have sprouts in your salad and nuts in your salad, that's an issue?
Absolutely.
So what he's saying is, like what they have at HIppocrates, they have a nut day and they have a grain day. But they always have sprouts there. But this is just the food combining aspect of it.
You would never put, for instance, a sprouted northern bean or a sprouted pinto bean in
like
with
sprouted lentils with sprouted almonds in your salad. Not a good combination.
Not do it. You notice everything I told you were protein-based seeds.
Sure.
So that's all. Now, I never do it. So let's make believe I do it. So let's imagine I want to also be filled up. Because you need satiation, especially when you initiate this. I would be putting 3 or 4 different beans and grains in there. So about 2 weeks ago, I was lecturing in Boston as a keynote speaker at the IV conference. And I went out and they had an organic salad bar there, and they had sprouted and cooked quinoa. So I put that on there. So you could put quinoa on there, you could put chickpea. I'm a big fan of chickpeas on there, et cetera, et cetera. And even if you're not eating 100% raw diet, a cooked form of that has very little nutrition in it, but you're going to get energy out of that.
Are you saying having a diet like here with your sprouts and putting a nut-based dressing on it is not a good combination? Not
a good combination if you're putting it with a grain. You're putting it with a grain or a bread you make out of a grain.
Well, not a bread. I'm saying the salad with the salad dressing made of nuts, but in the salad you have
So
lentil sprouts in the salad.
Lentil sprouts are different. Let's not confuse it. Lentil sprouts become a plant within 2 days. And lentil sprouts are generally grown for 3 to 4 days. So they convert from a carbohydrate, intense, and I'm a big fan of it, load it with iron. You can't get better iron.
Mung bean sprouts, same thing?
Yeah, mung bean sprouts, fully grown, same thing. And so these are really plant-based foods. Now, if I took a mung bean, you couldn't do it. If I try to chew a mung bean without sprouting it, I'd break my teeth, but that's a carbohydrate.
When you say fully grown, there's the sprout and there's the microgreen. Are you talking
about? As you see in Chinese food.
Okay, but what about the sprout?
If you have really bad digestion, it may give you a problem. Most of us, it would be okay.
So Brian's been doing this a long time.
Those of you out
and he sees what's working, what's not. So what I've noticed in the raw food community, in the old days, they used to say how much fat, how much protein, how much sugar, or not how much fat, how much fat, how much protein. And this is what they used to say. About how much fat, how much sugar. But now it's kind of changed. So now it's the sprouted camp versus the fruit camp. That's just the way it seems to have turned out. Brian represents HIppocrates Health Institute in the sprouted camp. And then you have the fruit camp. It seems most fruit eaters don't do much sprouts, and most sprouters don't do much fruit. That's just the way it seems to me. Let's hear the closing of this great interview with Brian, and I'm going to put a link below to both of the first two parts.
That are new to this. I think that this young man is doing a service by entertaining all of us who are experts in this. You've got to make these foods familiar. One of the lessons I had, the Prime Minister of India brought Ann Wigmore, our founder, and I there. And I'm over there talking like a big shot about how to make American raw food. Not a person understood what I was talking about. So finally, the doctor that was traveling the country with us came over and said, no, you've got to teach Indian food. And I was pretty young, but it sort of abruptly woke me up and realized how detached I was from my environment. You are used to eating foods. So we make a pizza here that tastes like pizza. I mean, Italians come here and say, how come you're giving me pizza? We make tacos here that taste like tacos you'd buy at a Mexican restaurant. You can do these things. The sushi you can make. If you're not doing that, if you're not dehydrating food, the likelihood you stick to a good, healthy, raw, plant-based diet is almost nothing.
I agree and disagree with him on that one because I'm able to do it. And I haven't dehydrated for years, but then a couple of years ago I started dehydrating, but I regret that and I don't want to dehydrate. But I have some friends, well, one friend in particular who's been eating raw a long time is not dehydrating. I mean, I had dehydrated crackers tonight, but I'm talking about the dehydrated recipes and all this stuff. I don't agree with him. I think if somebody gets that far where they're 100% raw and they're doing it long enough, they don't have to get to dehydrated stuff like him, but he's not all raw. But cooked, dehydrated, there's both a step down from all raw.
When I look back, I would like you to believe I was courageous and tough. It was women around me that were courageous and tough. When I was whining and saying I wanted a health cookie, they'd make a dehydrated cookie without sugar in the dehydrator. That's how I stuck to this. And that's the game. If you play that game, you're going to be okay. If you try to be heroic and walk on water, you're going to sink.
I think it does take time to transition, but I'd steer people away from the dehydrator. I mean, you could use it as a traditional foods, but in all essence, and if you're sick, you shouldn't do that. But if you're not sick and you're just looking to go to a raw food diet, I'd steer people away from dehydration completely, altogether. And I know this can be done. Whether you want to eat a lot of fruit or whether you just want to eat little fruit and stick to the Hippocrates sprouting plan, either way, it can be done. You can do it. You don't need dehydrated food to be successful long term. It certainly helped me in my walk, and I'm sure it'll help many of you, so I can't completely say avoid it, but as for me, I'm not planning on using a dehydrator for my food anytime soon. Today, man, and I look forward to doing it again.
Be well.
All right, that was the interview with Brian Clement at HIppocrates Health Institute. Again, if you want to learn more about Hippocrates Health Institute, contact me and we can go over that information and I could explain it all to you. I don't know of a better place to go if you have an illness that the doctors seem not to be coming to any solutions. All right, again, I'm going to put the link to the first two videos, the one about essential fatty acids on a vegan diet, and also the second one about fruit and sugar. I'll put those links below. This is the third one of this part, and I'll get that back there and interview Brian again. So please ask questions below the video, and I could take those questions to him. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Have a great day and a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.